Hi, this is Liz, and welcome to my podcast, Spiritually Speaking with Liz. We've got a fabulous guest with us today, but I'm just going to remind you to follow us on the YouTube channel, click the notification bell and the likes, and also on your podcast app. If you follow, then you'll get notifications when I upload anything new. Okay, today we've got a wonderful guest. We've got the fabulous Mita Mistry. So Mita practices mindfulness-based cognitive therapy and acupuncture. She's an author, a newspaper columnist, a speaker, and Mita has written 2 books. This is how I've become aware of her. How to Understand and Deal with Social Anxiety and All You Need is Rest. Mita, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me, Liz. It's a real honour to be here, so thank you for that lovely
Oh,
introduction.
you're welcome. I'm going to jump straight in on the mindfulness. So I know you started it very young. You were 13, I believe.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So what was it that brought it to you, and what was happening to you at the time, and how did it help you?
I was actually quite socially anxious as a child. I'd been through quite a bit of trauma in terms of bullying and just sort of growing up around violence, not in the home, but just in the area where I lived. I've had a sort of some traumatic experiences sort of growing up, and I think the bullying and a bit of racism that I faced as well resulted in me being quite socially anxious. And I always felt that I wanted to find some peace or just escape all the turmoil. It just felt very chaotic, the world around me. And my dad was, really into meditation. So he took me along to a meditation class. He was actually with a spiritual teacher from India, and I really loved it. So I went with an open mind. I didn't think anything of it, but actually, it was the first time, I think, probably as far as I can remember as a 13-year-old, that I actually felt very peaceful and I felt calm. And I thought, oh,
Oh,
this is really good. I'm going to try this again. And every time I tried it, I just felt so good. And it was a place I could retreat to within myself, even though the world around me might be chaotic and there's so much going on and things you can't control. I was still able to find something that was calming for me. So that's how I really got into it, is through my dad, and it was a spiritual teacher in India. Um,
who was the teacher?
so his name's Swami. Oh gosh, he passed away last year. Swami Narayan. So he passed away last year or the year before. So he lived in an ashram in a place called Dwarka in India. So he'd visit every year.
Mhm.
So I didn't see him every year, but we tried to see him as often as we could every time he visited, because I did really enjoy being in his company and just taking on his wisdom and listening. And yeah, so
Oh, that's lovely. They have such an amazing presence, don't they?
oh yeah, absolutely. You just feel, just being in their presence, you feel calm.
Hmm.
They just obviously embody that mindfulness, that wisdom, that genuine sort of compassion that you suddenly feel, oh yeah, this is really peaceful. I like this. It feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, then it's just taking it out into the world then, isn't it? Taking it into
Yeah.
daily life, and
Yeah.
which you've obviously done. So it obviously made such a big impact that then you wanted to train in it further to help people further. So
Yeah.
how does it work with the cognitive therapy? How do the two come together?
So I retrained to be an acupuncturist about 20 years ago. And what I was finding with the acupuncture, which is again energy medicine, and it works on mind, body, and emotional level, what I was finding was a lot of my patients were having mental health issues as well. And I wanted to do more for them, which, I mean, acupuncture is still great for anxiety, depression, and all of those things, and regulating your hormones and brain chemistry. But I felt that I could offer something more. And this is where I started to look into sort of mindfulness based interventions. And I found a course on mindfulness based cognitive therapy. So I went on that. So that was a further sort of 2 years training that I did. And that sort of allowed me to use my experience of mindfulness, but combine it with the sort of the CBT psychological aspect as well. And that's really been helpful as well for people. It's been really, really quite transformative. So,
I think the
yeah.
two that you're doing are quite powerful, because I'm a great advocate of acupuncture.
Yeah. Have you had it?
Yeah, I have it. Unfortunately, my practitioner retired. She
Oh,
was gorgeous.
no.
Yeah, she retired a couple of years ago, but I've just found somebody. I've just booked in and I'm going again next month. But I know
Brilliant.
it makes such a difference
It really
to me.
does.
Yeah, I think when you're aware of your energy, well, whether you're
Mhm.
aware or not, but I personally am very aware of my energy. So
Mhm.
I know that's just that final little tweak I need that just
Yeah.
keeps me, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
in.
and I find that with all of my patients and even myself, you know when you need a treatment. And
Mm.
even if you're not aware of your energy, you soon become quite fine-tuned into it as well. I find that within sort of 3 or 4 treatments, people are like, oh yes, I noticed the difference, or I noticed this sensation, and I need to do something different. So it does make people more self-aware of what's going on in their body, because often we are, on the go. We're so busy that we don't always listen to the messages that our bodies are giving us, or the wisdom or the signals, and we just carry on and then end up um, sometimes doing more harm than good. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we get stuck in a cycle of busy, don't we? It's
we
just this
do. We
busy, I'm
do.
busy, I'm busy, I'm too busy to, I'm too busy to.
Yeah.
And yeah, people don't, I've got a headache, I'll take tablets. They don't look at, well, why have I got a headache? Maybe it's the tension in my neck because I'm stressed about, or people
Mm.
don't seem to, a lot of people don't seem to listen to their bodies. And I'm a great believer in the mind body connection.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of illnesses, not all, of course, but a lot of illnesses do come from the mind, do come
Yes.
from stress, or how we've been holding ourselves, or
Mhm.
emotions that we've been holding in, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a real strong body of evidence out there that the mind body and your sort of psychology, they're all connected. And I don't know if you've come across Basil van der Kolk, who's written a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's all about how our body stores information about our past experiences in terms of the traumas that we've been through. And they get, it appears if we don't sort of heal or process those emotions or those memories, they get stored in our body, and then they can manifest as all kinds of um, things like mental health conditions, ADHD, just all kinds of things, physical ailments as well. So yeah, I strongly believe that there is always a root cause of a problem. And I think, and it's not anybody's fault, I just think it's the way our world is that everything's about instantaneous or quick fixes. So
Yeah.
that's what we've been conditioned to buy into now, from society, media, all the rest of it. And that's what people want, because they haven't got time. They just want a quick fix. But going to the root of issues takes a lot more effort, and it takes longer to see the results as well. But then when you do get them, they are a lot better in terms of their longevity, but also minimizing the sort of side effects as well, and going with the sort of natural order of things.
Yeah, and the freedom they create, I think, when you get to the
Yeah,
root of something, the freedom it creates not only in your mind but also in your body.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is important. And that's one thing that I do a lot of in my acupuncture work is I work on a 5 element system.
Mhm.
And so that's all about addressing the root cause of a person's imbalances. And it's just brilliant, because it really does give some wonderful results for people as well, not just physically in terms of pain or things like that, but also in terms of where they're going, their vision, their purpose, and what they want to achieve. And it's it's really fascinating. It's just yeah, it's just blows my mind sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I did work with a 5 element acupuncturist for a while.
Oh, brilliant.
I worked in the same clinic. It was his clinic, and I worked alongside
Right.
him. And yeah, he was incredible.
Mm.
the results he got, and yeah, it's just out of this world.
Yeah.
Okay, so back over onto your first book, The
Mhm.
Social Anxiety. So can you give us like a brief description of what is social anxiety?
Okay, so social anxiety is the overwhelming sort of fear of being judged or coming across not what so well, or being criticized or humiliated or embarrassed in a social situation, particularly sort of in front of a group of people. So it could be, we all get nervous when we've got to do some public speaking or stand up and talk in front of a group. That's quite normal. But when it's sort of taking over and you start to avoid those situations, so you'll make all the excuses in the world. So you've been given a wonderful opportunity to do a presentation. It's going to be great for your career, but you'll find you'll phone in sick or you'll find excuses to avoid it. And then what it starts to do is it really starts to hold you back in your progression in life. So it may be that you start avoiding social situations, talking to people, and then what that can result in is isolation, which we know isn't good for anybody's mental health, because as humans, we are hardwired to connect with one another to survive. So it can have a lot of sort of knock-on effects on your mental well-being, but as well as your sort of your growth and your fulfillment in life as well.
And it seems to be becoming more and more, I think, or whether we're just more aware of it and we talk about it, I don't know. But
Yeah,
I think the lockdowns certainly didn't help, did they? A lot of people that were living on their own, people that were maybe in family, even a family group, you can still feel isolated with people in your home, can't you? So
yeah.
it was I think that's sort of seems to have heightened it. Would you agree, or is it just the same as it always has been?
Yeah, it's definitely heightened it. The pandemic has made it worse. I mean, social anxiety is one of those anxiety disorders that often doesn't get mentioned, but it's actually the third largest sort of anxiety disorder, and it is on the rise. And indeed, the lockdown has had an impact, because if you think about it, we were told almost 2 years, maybe longer, to stay away from one another, to socially distance. And imagine what impact that's having on people's fear and anxiety. So, all of a sudden, the lockdown's over and you're having to socialize again. We haven't had that practice for a long time, but also it's the impact it's had on your mind. A lot of people are still, and I still see patients who are still afraid of getting too close to people. They're still in their head socially distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So the pandemic, we know, is a form of trauma as well on society, because it's changed the way we live, the way we work. Although things are seemingly back to normal, they're not really what they were. It's the world isn't the same place as it was.
No, no, there seems to be more overwhelm. There
Yeah,
seems to be like a deep rooted anger.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and so for people that suffer with overwhelm, what would you say that what is overwhelm? Why do we have this feeling of overwhelm? What creates it within us?
So overwhelm, really, it can start from your thoughts or your beliefs about yourself or the world, um, or a situation even. And it's these, so we all have negative thoughts. And we're on autopilot 46.9% of the time, and our brain is designed to solve problems and protect us. But when it becomes hardwired like that, and it's constantly only sort of picking up the negativity or the negative thought, what that does is it can have an impact on your stress response. So then you start to feel that heart racing, your palms sweaty, you start to feel overwhelmed, you start to get muzzy headed. It has an impact on the way the different parts of your brain function. So we have what we call the logical part of our brain, which is at the front of our brain. That shuts down when your stress response is activated. So you can't think straight. So, it's not a pleasant feeling. It's not something that is, going to necessarily harm you physically, as in like really badly, but it's just really unpleasant, and it can stop you from living life fully. And it's horrible when you're living in that dark place in your head and you can't see any hope. But actually, it is easy to, well, it's not easy, but it is possible to break that cycle. It's just acknowledging, you know what, I'm really struggling with this. I'm really overwhelmed. I can't stop thinking, you know, when those thoughts are churning over and over. And it's just catching them and stopping them in their tracks.
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's that presence. We all hear that we need to be present, but if you're present to your thoughts, present to what you're actually telling yourself, because there's a constant narrative, isn't there, going on? Sometimes you listen to it, sometimes you don't. Like you say, it's just babbling on in the background.
Yeah.
But it is just being aware of what you are actually telling yourself and how you are speaking to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding ways that work for you to switch off that, you know, catch those negative thoughts and switch it off and do something different. So there's loads of techniques to do that, but it, you know, one size doesn't fit all. What works for one person may not work for somebody else. So it's a case of exploring that and finding what works for you as well.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, so for example, for some people they find, so if, for example, let's say you're going to bed at night and you've got all these intrusive thoughts about an upcoming meeting or something that you're dreading and you just can't stop thinking about it. Some people find listening to a calming podcast is helpful, or an audio book, because if you think about it, it's like being read a bedtime story. If you've got a soothing voice talking to you, it can interrupt those intrusive thoughts, and then that can sort of help you to sleep. There's other sort of techniques like grounding techniques as well. So if you're out and about and you're feeling very panicky, there's breathing techniques you can do. So where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and then breathe out for a count of 8. Or you can do like a hand breathing meditation, which I find is really helpful for young people. It's, you know, sort of in schools when I do work with them, it's something they find easy to do. So you can trace your hand. So if you breathe in as you trace up, and then breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Obviously slower than that. That's actually, even doing that once, I find that it's so calming. And you can do it discreetly under a table, or, you know, you
Just
could be out.
watching it was really
Yeah,
calming.
it's just, it
I've
is
not heard of
really,
that one. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really
that
nice.
I love that one. It's really, really calming, and little young children find that one calming as well. And also it's that touch that we get as well. Even, you know, I know you're only touching your own fingers, but touch does help to release the bonding, and the love hormone oxytocin. So, you know, that's the other thing. If you've got a pet, give your pet a stroke, or give someone a hug, or get a hug from somebody. All of those things can help. There's loads of things out there you can do.
Well, that takes me on to your latest book that came out this year, which is called All You Need Is Rest. I haven't got it in the flesh, but I think you've
I've
got a
got it
copy,
here.
haven't you? But I have got it on my Kindle
Oh,
because
lovely.
I took that. We've just been away last week, and I took that with me. And
Nice.
yeah, and you know, I absolutely loved it because it's so
Yeah.
many tips. They're all well collated into the chapters, but there's so many tips. Um, that simple things, really simple things that people
Mm.
forget about and know, and it's just reminding you of that toolbox, isn't it? That,
It is.
and it's, you know, I'd definitely recommend it as a holiday read, because
Mm.
as I got on holidays, I mentioned in my last podcast, it took me a good couple of days
Mm.
to settle, to get away from this jibber jabber that was, did I
Mm.
do this, did, you know, like
Yeah.
business, when you leave in business, did I set this up, did I do that, and all that. And so it's going. And then the one day, and I thought, oh, I don't need to do anything. And that
Mm.
was the day that I picked your book up as well, so it was good timing.
Brilliant. Good.
Excuse me. So yeah, it was really really informative, and lots of tips in there brought together. So I definitely recommend that to people. So did that
Thank
come
you.
about through your tips and working with people?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the tips that I've written about is based on my experience, obviously my research as well. I've been doing this work for 20 years now. So I've read a lot of books as well. There's some of the stuff in there, hopefully, you wouldn't just find on the internet. It's not, these days you can Google things and everything's there. So I've tried to give some really unique things. And there's even some acupuncture points in there that I've included, which you can do with acupressure as well. So yeah, I really loved writing this one because, like you say, there's so many tips, but I just felt like, oh, actually, I could write more. There's so much more that I want to share. There's so many more things that
Hmm.
people could use that are so easy to do that they may not think of or may not necessarily know about because it's not on the internet or it's not from necessarily a trusted source or whatever. So, but yeah,
No, it's good. And I think it's a good one for people to have in the home, for
thank
sure,
you.
just to dip in and out of. It'd be
Yeah,
very useful.
thank
So obviously people can get it from the book, but so I'm finding that I'm coming across there's a lot of anxiety anyway, but I'm finding that there's a lot of frustration with parents and
you.
anxiety in young kids, like 7, 8, 9-year-olds.
Mhm.
What sort of tips are there? So there's the trace in the hand that you've told us about. What other things are there that we could bring? I think this should be taught in schools, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of tools for children as well, in terms of breathing exercises, but also things like colouring. So the way
Mm.
to switch off the anxious brain is to do things like colouring. There's one, I think I mentioned it in this one, or maybe might be writing it in the new one. I can't remember,
It was in
but
this one.
it
Yeah.
was in this one.
Yeah.
But I think getting creative is really important because what's happening is when somebody is anxious, their thinking brain is switched on, and it's taken over. So by doing something creative, it can be quite meditative. So like coloring books, getting them to sit down and color. For some people, they enjoy baking or even sort of modeling, like with plasticine. I don't know if they still use plasticine
Mhm.
or Play-Doh. I know it makes a lot of mess. It's not the best, but that touch and that sort of tactile thing can also be really grounding for children as well. Getting them out in nature, getting them to go on a little adventure, pick up stones, have a look at the flowers, let's draw them. There's so many things that you can do with children to calm their sort of nervous systems as well.
I think being in nature, a friend of mine's just been in, she hired like a little pod for a week. And so
Oh,
they were
nice.
in the middle of the woods, two
Oh,
young boys, they're 5 and 8.
wow.
She took colouring books, no screens, nothing, it wasn't you're not allowed, but she just thought, I don't want to encourage it because there was no power there anyway.
Mhm.
And it wasn't far from home. She did have to come home at one point to collect something, for an appointment actually.
Mhm.
But she then said to them, would you like me to get your iPads? And they're like, no, no, we don't want to. And
Mhm.
when I spoke
Brilliant.
to the eldest and said, what was your favorite? The youngest, it was all climbing the trees and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the eldest, it was so sweet. And he said, it was the colouring in because she'd made them all their own little colouring book. So they'd sit by the fire at the table and just colour in all together.
brilliant.
Yeah, and it was just so they were
Mm,
really tired from the day being out in nature physically
mm,
doing things, but
mm,
then that on a night was just calming them down.
mm,
And it seems
mm,
to I've noticed something a lot that so when you're in the supermarket, I have a shop, when people come in my shop, if the children start to get a bit loud or they're wanting to
mm.
touch things, then they just thrust the phone in front of them. Watch this, play with
Oh,
this book.
yes, yes.
And I don't know, but I'm no expert, but I don't think that's helping. It can't be helping, can it?
No,
It's not a.
no, I don't think it is. It's like, yeah, and I think it is creating this sort of disconnection and addiction to screens as well. And I see it, when we're out and about and if parents are trying to get there. And I'm not judging, but we've all done it. I've done it myself when I've put a screen in front of my child because I need to get
Yeah, of
some jobs
course.
done. I mean, they're
Yeah.
teenagers now, but so I totally empathize with that. But yeah, it is even, you see people doing it at breakfast on holiday, just giving their child a DVD, and that's the only way they can get them to eat. And I think we have just become so reliant on devices. It's just the way the world's gone, sadly. But I also think it is contributing to a lot of the problems that we face. And like you say, that beautiful story you've just shared about your friend and her two boys, it just goes to show those simple activities, being outdoors, climbing a tree, colouring, doing a puzzle together, it gives you a sense of togetherness. And actually, that's what children want at the end of the day, is
Yeah.
they just want
Attention,
their
don't they?
presence. They just want
Yeah.
our presence. And I think as adults, we're probably all quite distracted by our phones as well. And I know I'm guilty of it too. And I have to set reminders on my phone to say, I've been on the phone for X amount of time today. So like I have to put limits on some of my apps as well. Otherwise, sometimes it can spiral out of control. So I think most of us sort of have been there.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really? Because
Mm.
I'm the same. So like with Instagram, I'll find that, I'll just go on and just check my messages. And then you think, well, I'll just scroll. And you can end up, and you've lost half an hour in
Yeah,
what feels like an instant, just
yeah,
just scrolling. So there's that
yeah.
side of it. And the side I find with social media that I'm seeing more and more, and you
Mm.
will with teenagers, is the how you should look, how you should
Yeah.
be, the pressure that seems to be coming from it.
Mm.
It is quite difficult, isn't it, for
Yeah.
a young mind to, well, for any mind, but to deal with that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much research out there that shows that there are very clear links between social media sort of usage and mental health issues, and anxiety and depression. And there is a pressure. And unfortunately, the way our human brain is constructed is we naturally compare ourselves with what we see in front of us. So social media does that. You're seeing pictures of, filtered, wonderful, perfect looking images, and then you start to feel bad about yourself. You think, well, I don't look like that. And we know that there's also been a rise in young girls, particularly wanting to have cosmetic surgery to look like their filters. And these are girls younger than 18. And that was certainly not a problem when I was growing up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, showing my age now. That was never a problem
Same.
because we,
No,
we
it
didn't
wasn't there,
have
was it? It
we
was just a
didn't have
magazine.
that. Yeah, it was, but the magazines probably had that effect on us as well. The perfect sort of, you've got to look a certain way, be a certain size, have a certain sort of physique. So we know that the social media and media does put pressure on young people, but it's something that I think as parents we just have to be mindful of it and educate our children, and sort of encourage them to have regular breaks, and not from social media, or not use it. I mean, fortunately, my two are not social media fans at all. They don't like it.
That's good.
They
It's rare,
they
but good.
they absolutely don't like it. They have it, but they don't post anything ever, and they barely use it because my son says Facebook should be renamed as Nosebook because it's just people being nosy.
It's true.
So you've got a good point there. So
Yeah, no, it's true, is that, isn't it? It is. I think it's the nosy,
yeah,
and then from the posters, if that's what you'd call them, the people posting, it's sort of like the look at me on this wonderful holiday, everything's
yeah,
perfect, and you
yeah.
sort of think, what happens when that phone goes down?
Mm,
Are you in that perfect moment? Was it
yeah,
ever perfect, or is it something that you're just trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
create? It's quite a tricky one, isn't it, I
It
think?
is. It is. I mean, I'm not a big poster, but I have to use social media for work, and obviously to get the message out there about the books and healing. So I use it for that mostly, and family sort of celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries. I think it's a nice way to celebrate people. But in terms of sort of, yes, I know what you mean. I don't like the whole look what I'm doing, look what I've eaten. I don't see the point in sharing that. It'd be like, I remember it was like a meme on it was on the internet a few years ago, where it was a video of people as if they were on Facebook or Twitter, and they were taking photos of their food, then running up and down the street, knocking on all their neighbours' doors, saying, "Look what I've eaten today." Because that's what social media is like. Look what I've eaten. It'd be like you running up and down the street, knocking on all your neighbours' doors, saying, "Look what I've eaten."
You see, when you put it like that, it's absolutely ludicrous, isn't it?
It is. And I think that watching that made me sort of think, God, actually, yeah, that's so true. Why are we even doing this? Why are we capturing every single thing? Why can't we just enjoy that moment without sort of capturing it or putting it anywhere? So
You can see where social anxiety's grown, can't you?
yeah,
With, you know,
absolutely.
with things like that.
Yeah, and social media does make social anxiety worse as well, because if you think about it, sometimes people might not post because they think, um, I'm just about to jump into a room full of people that are shouting and screaming. And what if I say something, or if I comment on this post and it comes across embarrassing, or I get judged? So again, yeah, so and social media anxiety is also a thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm.
So with your sort of like going back to your second book, for you, Mita, what is your self-care routine? What are your non-negotiables? What do you like to do as treats just for you to look after you?
So that's a lovely question. So for me, my non-negotiables are I have to get outdoors into nature for at least half an hour every single day, whether that I walk to the shop or the post office or go for a run, which is my preference. I'd like to go for a run if I can. But that is my sort of go-to every single day is to get out into nature. And then I have like a ritual on Saturday mornings, where Saturday mornings are like my mindful mornings, where I slow everything down. So I do everything purposefully slowly. So I get up when my body wants to get up. There's no alarm clock. I have my tea or coffee very slowly, my breakfast slowly. I might do a face mask or paint my nails or give my hands a massage. I just relish on Saturday mornings. I read inspirational stuff, listen to podcasts, meditations, or I do a bit of yoga. Oh, yoga's my other one. Yoga's like a treat. That's my real treat. Um, yeah, all of those things really. How about you?
For me, meditation's my non-negotiable on a morning, and out in nature. Like you say, that's my real. While we were away last week, it was somewhere very peaceful. It had woods next to it, and so just going in and just that really brings me to presence. And we have a gorgeous little wood in our village that
Nice.
it's only small, but when you walk through it, you can be through it in 10 minutes. But when you walk through it, it's just the peace, it's the birds
Yeah,
singing, it's just to me it's just like it sweeps me clean. It sort
yeah,
of like clears my energy. So yeah, and physical exercise, the yoga or doing stretches of some form.
yeah, lovely. Yeah, and nature, I just find it, observing the different seasons as well.
Mm.
So I'll do the same run, but I just love seeing how through the same sort of route, but throughout the year, and just noticing how it changes and how it's beautiful in every season. Although, I don't particularly like the cold or winter that much, but it's still very beautiful.
Yeah, there's always a beauty to it, isn't there?
There is still a beauty to it, and then in autumn, and the colors of the leaves and just everything. I just love seeing that transition and the change, and that's why I do like to get outdoors and sort of run, because you sort of get to see quite a bit and hear the birds and see the first butterflies and the first flies. It's just gorgeous. Yeah.
We are very blessed where we live. I feel
Wow.
it's we lived in Spain for 10 years, and it was in the desert region, and that
Oh,
had its own beauty. But
yeah.
I loved that you had 320 days of sunshine, because
Yeah.
I absolutely adore the sun. But when we came back, I can remember just being, well, when we used to visit, we normally used to visit sort of like, I used to try do it sort of like end of April, May, then there were the bluebells out,
Yeah.
because we were because it was the desert area, so it was all olive trees, almond trees, cacti, and
Mhm.
that was it. That was your greenery, really.
Yeah.
So to come back and to see that lush green and that
Yeah.
purple, and the vivid colours,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, like you say, in autumn, that change of colours.
Mm.
Like you, I'm not a big fan of winter, and I'm learning to see the beauty in winter.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of
Yeah.
the dark. Like for me
Yeah.
now, this time of year is heaven. It's light,
Yeah. Yeah.
for such a long time.
Mm.
It's warm. It's
Yeah.
just, all the flowers are out, all the leaves
Absolutely.
are out. It's just that for me makes me very present, because
Yeah.
you're just in awe of nature, aren't you? And I think that's
Absolutely.
the absolute wonder of nature.
It really is. I am really loving it right now, and the smells as well, the
Yeah.
flowers, the fragrance is so it's lovely. But again, we wouldn't have it if we didn't have the winter, so we do have to have it, I guess.
That's it. And we wouldn't have the green if we didn't have the
Yeah,
rain. But yeah, it
exactly.
is
Yeah.
that. And smell, like you're saying about smell, smell is so emotive, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, today on my run today, there was I don't know what I think it was honeysuckle or something. It was so fragrant. I was like, my goodness, it was so potent. It smelled like perfume. And it's quite incredible, isn't it, when you sort of really tune your senses into nature, what you actually hear and smell and notice as well. But also there was some freshly cut lawn as well, and that always smells very nice as well. So those sort of scents take me back to my childhood, when I remember some of the carefree days when you're at school and sports day, and you're given ice creams and things. So it does bring back sort of nice memories.
Absolutely. I was walking the dog early this morning, obviously, because it's a warm day. And I thought, if anybody's watching me, they'll think I'm crazy. But I was walking down the village to the woods, and
Yeah.
there's loads of roses along the way. But there was one, it was a very tiny little rose. I don't know what it was, but I smell everything. And I think when I was smelling this rose, and it just transported me back to being 6 years old, the smell of
Yeah.
it. And I
Yeah.
remember I used to make rose water, probably not properly, but
Oh,
I
I
was,
did as well, actually, from the garden. I used to make perfume.
yeah, same,
Yeah.
same. And it just took me back. And I was just like, and then the dog sort of like pulled, and I was like, oh yeah, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
But I was just lost in that moment.
Yeah, and it's moments like those that are really good for us, that nourish us, and we need to remember our sort of inner child and playfulness as well, because I think life can get a little bit serious and with everything going on in the world, and we sort of, and I think as we get older, we sort of start to notice differences in our body and things. So it's important that we do remember those nostalgic moments as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it is very important. Well,
yeah.
Mita, I've loved chatting with you today.
Oh,
It's
I
been,
have as well. Love chatting with you. It's been so lovely and so natural and easy and very calm. Thank you,
oh,
Liz.
you're welcome. And it's so informative for people. You've given us loads of tips, and
I
I
hope so.
really do recommend that you get Mita's book. I'll put the details in the show notes below, and her first book as well. They're both, I think the first book really will explain a lot to you of what's going on in the world now. I
Thank
think it's a
you.
great tool for helping people to, whether you suffer with the social anxiety yourself or people that do. I think it's they're both great books. I think it should be taught in schools. It really
Yeah.
should be taught in schools. It should be part of the curriculum. But
Yeah.
I'll hand that mantle to you.
Thank you. A lot of people have said that, and yeah, I will. I have contacted schools, and schools have been in touch. So, yeah,
Well,
hopefully there'll
keep
be.
us posted on that
I
one.
will do. I will do.
Okay. So again, thank you for joining me.
Thank
Guys,
you for
thanks for
having me.
joining. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.